How's it going, American History 2 students? This is Mr. Bell coming back at you with another COVID-19 shutdown lesson via YouTube. Thank you so much for clicking play and taking the time to listen to me today as you're at home. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go over the Black History Person of the Day for Black History Month back in February, which I didn't get to finish this PowerPoint because wife went into labor. Then we're going to get in today's warm-up, and then I'm going to do a read-along with you for this week's reading activity on the rise of Imperial Japan, which you can do with or without this video, and you can find that activity via email. It's up in the front office if you want a paper copy, and of course, it's on campus. So let's get started. I tried to make these fun. I like pro wrestling, or I used to really like it. Booker T, who does take his name from Booker T. Washington. He was the final World Championship Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion when that company closed down. He went out on top. He won the main event of the final Monday Night Nitro, which was the biggest wrestling show on cable television for about 4 years. He won a total of 35 championships between three companies, WWE, WCW, and TNA, Total Nonstop Action. He's a former SmackDown announcer. He's from Harlem, New York. He was one part of the tag team known as Harlem Heat with his brother Stevie Ray. They held several tag team titles, and he was inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013. So let's get into today's warm-up. Today is 147 of 180. If this were a normal school year, it is COVID-19 shutdown day number 21. This is just school days we're counting here, so it's been much more than that, counting spring break and weekends and whatnot. And this is your lesson for Wednesday, April 21st, 2020. What were Nuremberg laws? And these are going to review things from 5.1. Nuremberg laws were laws that were made by Adolf Hitler to limit Jewish rights leading up to the Holocaust. They could only buy expired food. They couldn't go certain places. And it was an effort to dehumanize the Jewish people. That way, when Hitler started doing things like rounding them up on the night of broken glass, some people saw them as less than human, and they either didn't care enough to speak up or were too afraid to. Explain the non-aggression pact of World War II. Did it work? The non-aggression pact was a pact between Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. It did not work because once Hitler invaded Poland, he was supposed to divide that land in half with Joseph Stalin, and Joseph Stalin would leave Adolf Hitler alone. Hitler invades Poland, starts construction of Auschwitz infamously, and it comes time to give Stalin his chunk of Poland. He says no. So what winds up happening is that Stalin ends up joining somebody he wouldn't have joined, which is the Allied powers, with France, the United States, of course, them, the Soviet Union, and England. And this ends up being Hitler's big mistake during World War II because, as you'll learn in the coming days on here, it is the Battle of Stalingrad, and once the Nazis invade Russia, that turns the tide of the war. The Munich Pact was a deal between England and Hitler, the Nazis, and it was agreed upon not by Winston Churchill but by Neville Chamberlain. It was an example of appeasement, giving in so that somebody will just leave you alone. So this example of appeasement, England gave up the Czech Republic. It was known as the Sudetenland back then, but what today is the Czech Republic. And the thinking was that Hitler would take the Czech Republic and quit taking more land throughout Europe. Of course, that's not what ended up happening. Appeasement never works, and England ends up at war with Hitler, especially once Churchill becomes prime minister. So to review these, Nuremberg laws limited Jewish citizenship rights leading up to the Holocaust. Non-aggression pact was a deal between Hitler and Stalin to divide Poland. Hitler bailed out on that deal, turned Stalin against him. The Munich Pact was a deal to give the Czech Republic to, of course it wasn't the Czech Republic back then, it was the Sudetenland. England would give that land to Hitler if he'd quit taking over other land. So, of course, that did not work. So let's get into this reading activity for today. I've emailed you this and I have put it on Canvas, as I mentioned earlier. So this originally is designed to be a group investigation. You would split into 3 groups, and you have 3 different perspectives. And the focus here is the build up toward World War II and the actions by people within leadership of these different factions, these different powers that lead to the eventual war that that cost about 60 million lives if you include the Holocaust. So I would put, again, we're not doing groups because this isn't normal times, and that's just not practical the way that I'm conducting my class during this shutdown. Group 1 would be the Japanese perspective, focus on Imperial Japan. Group 2 would have been Hitler and excerpt from his book Mein Kampf, which is kind of his manifesto, what he believes in. And Group 3 would have been Dylan from the United States perspective. Now, all of these are in relation to Japan. Just one comes from the Japanese perspective. Another one comes from the Hitler, of course, that's the German Nazi perspective. And the last one would come from the United States perspective. But so for this watch along, I'm going to do Group 1. Now, if you're doing this on your own, you can read Group 2 or 3 if you would like to do that. Whichever one, these questions fit all the readings. So whichever one you decide to do, whether it's Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, just answer these 3 questions. I will tell you, if you're doing the watch along, you took the time to do this today, I will just allow you to do 1 and 2 here. 3, as you see in your eyes, was the path each group had in the proper one. That's an opinion question anyway, and it's kind of hard to do without every group reading these out loud. So if you're watching along, we're going to read Group 1, and you're going to answer questions 1 and 2. There is a link, I believe y'all have access to the kind of the overall document this was taken from. So, Group 1. You will read the Japanese perspective regarding their reasons for their expansion by reading this excerpt from an article, Manchuria, 1931. Of course, Japan invaded Manchuria, sent up the puppet state Manchukuo, which was controlled by the Japanese. So here we go. Why did Japan invade Manchuria, which is in China? Japan was becoming increasingly crowded due to its limited size as a nation and its rapidly increasing population. So it was a simple size reason. Of course, all this is excuses for imperialism, but it's interesting how they lay out their case here. Again, this is the Japanese perspective, so it's going to be biased toward them. So this is where we're at. Manchuria offered 200,000 square kilometers, which as part of a Japanese empire would easily accommodate an overspilling population. The Japanese people had a very low opinion of the Chinese, a Japanese from an undermission, and therefore would have given no thought to the Manchurian people whatsoever. It is also, that's translated from Japanese, so it's not pronounced properly when you put it in English. It was also believed in Japan that Manchuria was rich in minerals, forestry, and rich agriculture land. With the problems that Japan was experiencing at home, Manchuria seemed like an obvious solution to these problems. Next paragraph. By 1931, Japan had invested vast sums of money into the economy of Manchuria, effectively controlled by the South Manchuria Railway Company. To guard all of its investments, Japan kept a large army in southern Manchuria. So they have an excuse because of the railway to keep that army there. Now, we're going to the next paragraph. It mentions the Depression. The Depression was a worldwide thing. It wasn't just an American and European thing. This is all over, including Southeast Asia. The 1929 Depression hit Japan hard. The civilian government found it had no solutions to the problems presented by the worldwide depression, and to the army, the civilian government looked weak. Many people admired the more robust response of the army. The unemployed of Japan took the strength of this army to assist their plight rather to what weak politicians were doing. The voices of senior army generals were heard, and they argued for a campaign to win new colonies abroad so that the industries there could be exploited for Japan. The most obvious target was a full-scale invasion of Manchuria. So what this article really describes is a push toward totalitarianism. In other words, one of the primary drivers of your country's government is the power of your military, but not just the power, your willingness to use force to inspire people or to require people to do certain things. So I've read that group 1. You can listen to me read it on this video, and you can answer questions 1 and 2 and just share that with me in a Google Doc. That's going to be it. This is a very short reading activity today. If you want to do 2 and 3, you're more than welcome to do all 3, to just do 1. If I was picking 1 to do, if you would like my advice, I would just do this first one here, do the watch along, and do these first 2 questions. I hope you're all doing well. I know it's been a crazy time. I miss you guys. I hope you're staying safe and washing your hands. If you have any questions regarding this activity or the class or just how school's looking like it's going to shape up, you can email me at bsbell@clevelandcountyschools.org. The governor of North Carolina is rumored to make an announcement this week regarding public schools. He could do that this afternoon. He could do it Friday afternoon. So this is being recorded on a Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020. So thank you so much, and have a great day.